So here we go, and a very, very, very good morning to everyone who is here live, and to all of you who are joining afterwards on YouTube. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. So this is the 7th of our 9 sessions on the third Karmapa's text on Buddha nature. And so we're doing well, and it's going more or less according to plan. And so, as usual, we start our session finding the very, very, very best motivation we can muster. And as you know, it means having a very big mind, big meaning inclusive, including as many, many beings in different worlds and this world as we can, but very especially including those who are part of our own karma in this life. They're very real for us. They're part of our own psychology, and we have a karmic connection. They'll be back, but we'll be back together again and again. So we want to make that togetherness better and better, life after life after life. Now, those of you who are on the mailing list for this course, who registered, should have received a document starting prayers with a couple of little birds at the bottom. So this is how I'd like to start today. It's the same meaning as the prayers we do, but in English, so that you can understand it. But also some of the meanings unpacked a little bit so that it makes more sense. One of the main things that I've unpacked into quite a few words is the Tibetan term dewa, which is usually translated as happiness. And so very often you see in the 4 limitless contemplations, it says, may all beings be happy. In a less good translation, which really isn't a good translation, they say, have happiness, which isn't English. People don't have happiness. If you walk into your local supermarket and say to somebody, do you have happiness? They won't really understand you. You say, are you happy? But the way the Tibetan language works, it uses a possessive to have something, happiness. So it's not a good translation, but you'll find that most places. Literal translations are stupid, quite honestly. Meaning translations are the only ones that work. So anyway, you see that as happy. But dewa does not just mean happy, because happy gives us the feeling of a temporary state, and it's what we have in smiley faces, happy, sad, and all of that. And the dewa, what we're wishing people to be through our loving care, is well. If anything, it means well. And I think like Thich Nhat Hanh people, maybe some others, they often translate it like that. They say, may you be well. And then the meaning of that is absolutely spot on when we're looking at this whole being well or suffering because of our karma, the whole description of samsara. So we can unpack being well into different areas. What we are wishing, because we're praying for something, is for people to have first of all, a long life, so that they have time to fulfill what they need to do, to look after their families before they die, and all that kind of thing. We really wish that for people. The opposite, to have your life cut short unexpectedly, that's suffering. It's suffering for you, it brings suffering to other people. And then second, we don't want people just to live long. We want them to be healthy. And good health is something that Buddha worked for, great Buddhist like Ashoka, the Indian emperor, he sent lots and lots of medical missions all over. So for people to be healthy in their body is very, very important. And of course, the opposite, when we're unwell, then we suffer. And so we're wishing long life, good health. And then third, we're wishing people to have resources, because you can live long and you can be fairly well and healthy, but life can be a big struggle just to have a roof over your head, food to eat, and the resources we need to be alive. So behind this wish is for people to have the resources. And of course, if you don't have enough resources, then you can suffer. Another thing we're wishing for, number 4, is friends. You could have a long life, good health, and lots of resources. You could even be a billionaire, but you might not have any friends. And then that's so we're wishing for people to have friends that they can share with, communicate with. And so the opposite is a suffering. And then not just friends, but to have a good reputation. That's number 5. So it's not nice to be looked down upon, to be treated badly by others. Many people grow up being treated badly, and it stays with them all their life. It's very hard. So we want people to have respect, be respected. And then number 6 is to live in a place of peace, not in a place of war, as we see these days, to live in a place of conflict and war. Not necessarily war with other countries, where people are in conflict with each other. It can be in the home, it can be within the society. So that makes disturbing energy, difficult situations all around. So we want them to be living in peaceful circumstances. And then number 7 is to be living in times of plenty. Times of plenty means times of harmony. So when Buddha describes the different cycles of time for this planet, for other worlds, then there are times when everything's in harmony. It says you need to eat so little because the food is beautifully nutritious. And it's plentiful and varied and all around you. These are the good times. Just now, we're heading for times when the food loses its value. It's much more poisonous. There are many more diseases and problems because of that. But it's not just the food that grows. It's the whole environment is harmonious and plentiful. It kind of feeds us from the way it is. And the opposite is when the environment drains us and so on and doesn't nourish. So there's 7 main things. Of course, mainly we want people to get out of samsara and rebirth, but that's going to take a long time. So in the meantime, we're wishing them not as an ultimate goal, because of it, we're wishing them to have those things. And then because we believe in karma, cause and effect, then we're not just praying for those things for people. The main thing is we're praying that they know how to create the karma, create the good causes, which will make these things come in their future lives. That's very, very important. So anyway, let's start. So if you want to do the prayers you normally do if you prefer the Tibetan, please do them in the Tibetan, but be with me in heart as I read this out in English. We take refuge in the Buddha, in the Dharma, and in the community of most noble minds. From this moment until we reach the very heart of enlightenment. through the practice of generosity and all 6 transcendent virtues, may we reach total awakening and every enlightened quality to be able to truly help sentient beings so lost in samsara. May each and every being be well, live long, be healthy, be well provided for, have good friends, find respect, live in places of peace and plenty, and most of all, practice Dharma. May they each create the causes for these things to be their wealth in future lives. May they be free from suffering and from creating the causes of future suffering. May they discover the natural, sacred well-being that is totally beyond suffering. May they attain the great equanimity, free of closeness or distance from anyone. Deyata shame shamavati shamata shadru kurimam kurimarajite karota ke yorite jovati oluyami vishuddha nimale malapanaye kukure kaka grase grasana omuki paramuki amuki Shame dawane savagraha bandhanane negritva Sava bhava pravadina vimukta marapasha Savitva buddhamudra anurgatita Sava mare butsarita parishuddhe bigashantu Sava marakama. Glorious Guru, source of all blessing, ever present above my head, on lotus and moon seat, through your immense kindness, ever sustain me, that the accomplishments of body, speech, and mind flow from you, and we are one. Thank you very much. So now we have to pick up from where we left off. I won't make a resume this time. The last 2 sessions I kind of made a resume at the beginning, so we'll get straight on with it. Now last time we looked at the 32 qualities of dharmakaya. We looked at its 10 powers and 4 kinds of fearlessness, and then 18 distinctive qualities. This is, what can we say? It's an invitation for you to reflect. What am I trying to say? You'll come across the term dharmakaya, of course, a lot in Tibetan Buddhism, and especially in meditation texts, meditation instruction. And as I explained in the previous talks, the Buddha is mainly 4 kayas or 3. And dharmakaya, if we do separate those things, let me take you back. I talked about a candle flame and how the heat and the light and the shape of the candle flame, they're just our ways of describing it. And so like if you've got, yes, you can see a flame. If you've got a flame, then we could explore the heat a lot. We could bring all sorts of machines, talk about it, and so on. And the same with the light, how much it could illuminate, and what kind of light, what kind of frequencies of color, and the shape, and look more closely into the details, and all those things. But basically, it's a candle flame. if whatever it is, if what makes the heat isn't there, then there won't be any light and there won't be any shape either. So when we talk about Buddha, of course we're saying Buddha nature, that our true nature is Buddha. Then we talk about it so we can understand it in terms of dharmakaya and then the two form kayas, sambhogakaya and nirmanakaya, how the Buddha manifests to other beings. But even though we do that, we must remember it's one. But when we talk about dharmakaya, we say this is the real Buddha as is. And it's formless. It's not Buddhas as shapes, as beings, as pure lands or anything. There's no form. No form. So when you think about the qualities we looked at last time, then the fearlessness doesn't have form. And wisdom, doesn't have color, shape, doesn't take up this much space or that much space. Wisdom is formless. And the distinctive qualities, the Buddha's mindfulness and wisdom and so on, they don't have form. And then dharmakaya is doubly permanent. It's permanent because it always is, has been, will be, will never change in that sense. But then in itself, in terms of its fearlessness or wisdom, they never change the way what it is. When we look at the form kayas, the way Buddhas manifest, with forms, with shape, with color, with words, with teachings, with so much, then that's singly permanent. It's always there. But the way it manifests today, tomorrow, the next day, will be different. It's like a plumber. They're always a plumber, but today they're fixing your taps. Tomorrow they're fixing the neighbor's gas boiler, but they're always a plumber. So the Buddha's Sambhogakaya is always at work, Nirmanakaya is always at work, but then they are not a sort of constant isness like Dharmakaya. I can't explain these. It's things we think about, that we meditate on more and more as the years go by, about the difference between Buddha not manifest and manifest. But if you've been doing that, and I hope you are, because I really, really hope you think about these teachings, don't just sort of receive them and think that's it. We need to, it's an invitation to explore. But if you think about it, then what is fear? What is fearless? Can you just sit down and be fearless? Or does it need something? You can't really tell if you're fearless or not until a tiger comes into the room, and then you know. But so if you look at those qualities, 18 qualities, the fearlessness, then wisdom. Can you just sit down and be wise? If I ask you now, please, let's sit for 2 minutes and be wise. What are you going to do? You can be wise about something, of course. So when we know how all the worlds of the 6 realms and all of the stages of the path, and people are becoming more and more bright and light, how they are changing, then maybe you've been wondering, what is fearlessness? So it means the Buddha has a basic quality of being that whenever circumstances present, there is automatically fearlessness. In Maitreya's teachings, he gives the example of the sun. Now, we know a lot more about the sun. It's this big hydrogen bomb up in the sky than they did in Asanga's time when Maitreya's teachings were received. But nevertheless, they knew that the sun just is. It's this huge ball of light and heat. So whenever something's turned towards it, it will be illuminated. Whenever a seed's planted in the ground, then in the daytime, the light and the heat will nourish the seed. The sun's constantly being sun. It's not thinking, oh, tomorrow I've got 25,000 seeds to get going on Earth, or I've got something like 16 billion windows on Earth to shine through. Better get working. It just is the sun. But as soon as there's a window and it's the Earth's facing the sun, you'll get light. So let's go back to my flame. Then, so if I've got this flame, where is it in the camera? Okay. Then that's just burning away. But if ever I put a stick of incense on it, then the incense lights, and there you go. The flame's constantly being a flame, but whenever something comes into contact, things will happen. So please think about this. No? Just got wax all over my trousers. Oh well, that was good. So it's for plums, trying to make clever examples. So anyway, please explore that when you consider the 32 special qualities of the Dharmakaya. Now, in the original Buddha nature teachings, then you go on from the formless Dharmakaya, the constant sort of, can you say, Buddha as Buddha knows Buddha. When you become Buddha, that's what you'll become, wisdom, fearlessness, and so on. Normally we go on from there to look at the qualities of the form kayas. We have the lists, we have the details, and so on. But here, in Karmapa's text, he takes us to a different place, some other considerations before the form kayas. And then the form kayas, which are very important for us because that's the way we access Buddha mind. The incense fell on the carpet. I don't want a burnt carpet. So, it's through the form kayas. We access Buddha mind through the form kayas. So they're very important for us, but they mentioned the 32 qualities again there, very briefly. So now there's one thing I want to add, which comes mainly through the oral instructions when we do Buddha nature studies with our lamas and khenpos, is you might have wondered, I'm sure you wondered, where's the compassion? Nobody said something about compassion. Did anybody wonder? Well, it doesn't matter. I'm not asking you a question, but Buddha mind, normally when I describe it, is wisdom, compassion, power. These are in Maitreya's teachings. But when we look at those qualities of Dharmakaya, then you don't see compassion mentioned as something special. So I want to mention it very, very briefly here. It's a huge topic. Now, not only is it a huge topic, but it's one where different Buddhist traditions don't agree. So sometimes you might wonder in Tibet, why was there a Kagyu tradition, a Gelugpa tradition, Nyingma tradition, and so much of what they have as Buddha's teaching is the same. But then there are disagreements, differences of opinion. So the nature of Buddha's compassion is described differently. Some say Buddha mind, this isness that always was, that people call God, Buddha mind, whatever it is, the timeless, changeless isness is compassionate. Others say, in itself, not. But when engaged with beings' minds in their relative world, you remember last time we looked at how each person is in their own bubble of awareness, then the automatic interface is that the person experiences compassion. So some Buddhists say that compassion only exists on a relative level, but it's not part and parcel of this ultimate mind, this Buddha nature that we are studying. In our Kagyu tradition, and in the Nyingma tradition as well, what we say in Tibetan, beautiful phrase, is Tong Ni Nyingje Nyingpo Chen. Shunyata that has compassion as its heart essence, meaning you cannot separate the wisdom and compassion of the Buddha mind. Wisdom, shunyata, wisdom, you can interchange them. Shunyata doesn't mean empty space. Shunyata means wisdom that sees through all the illusions. Very important point. Shunyata, voidness, emptiness, doesn't mean empty space. It means one sees things aren't as solid, as real, as separate, as fixed as they appear to us in our relative minds. We see through that. We see through the illusion. We know how the conjurer of samsara gets the rabbits out the hat. We know, we see through it. So shunyata is wisdom that has compassion inseparable from it. You can't separate them in any way at all. So that's our view. So then, and this doesn't really work in words, but when you meditate, and when your meditation is successful, and you actually feel Buddha mind, you are Buddha mind, then you'll experience how wisdom and compassion are inseparable. The compassion is there inside the wisdom. When this mind so totally free, that's never ever been entangled, always been perfect, meets the confusion and the suffering and all that's inside a relative mind, it knows it exactly as it is. Remember, in the wisdoms, it knows all the causes and conditions, the paths of each and every being. And immediately there is compassion, but it's not gushy, get your handkerchief out and, oh no, like this, what am I going to do? It's, on the contrary, it is a peace, a stability. If you go in for an interview with a really good Rinpoche, then they sit in Buddha mind. And out of that serenity, no agenda, then their advice comes spontaneously to you. So anyway, I thought I'd mention, now we've looked at the 32 qualities of dharmakaya, then mention compassion and invite you to think about this. It's a very interesting point, because in our prayers, we are longing to become Buddha. We do need to know what we're longing to become. Not because my friend said it's a good idea to be Buddha. If you're going to practice the path, which is so hard to practice in this life, it must be for something that's worthwhile. So the more we understand it from the outset, then the truer our diligence and so on will be. So now if we go to the text, in the next section, having looked at it's the fourth in the structure. So we've looked at 10 powers, number 1, 4 kinds of fearlessness, number 3, number 2, the 18 distinctive qualities, number 3. Now, number 4 is how all of those 32 are present, but not apparent. Present, but not apparent. Present means now. If you remember in the earlier part of the text, we saw actually there is only now. There's only now. The rest is all gone, and it's not gone somewhere. It's not parked in your garage. It's gone. Gone. Not a drop remaining. Gone. Future hasn't happened yet. That's not in the wings at the side of the stage waiting to come on board. It's nothing. Not a drop. There's only this moment. Then in this moment, the fearlessness, the wisdom, and those distinctive qualities, beautiful qualities. Remember, it said, and each one of these has 1,000,000 applications. They are you right now. They are here, right now, in this moment. But where are they? They're not apparent. It will make life so much easier if they were there. But they are not apparent. So why? Very, very important. So the text says, at present, there's a contradiction with this. There is no certainty that what is, these 32 qualities, really is. If I'm telling you, hello, hello Paul, hello Rose, whoever it is, really and truly, you are 4 fearlessnesses and 10 wisdoms. Yeah. It's like if I'm telling you, really and truly, you're a rhinoceros. You think, no, I'm not. I'm me. I'm all of this. It's not apparent. So it says there's no certainty that what is, truly is, dharmakaya, really is. Therefore, there is the idea that what is not really is. This is, well, in the translation it's an imaginary creation. Now, here we're coming back in these lines to these 3 topics I explained, I think, in the last talk, and maybe the talk before as well. Very, very important. We are this mind here, right now. If we divide it so that we can understand it, then what is this mind? So if I won't do it all again, but you remember we have 3 things. One is called what is dependent on our past karma. So you remember this manifests as our family, what parents we're born to, brothers, sisters, our health, our financial circumstances, the world, the country we're born into, the time in history we're born into it. All of that is the result of past karma. The main point is it can't really be changed quickly. It can be changed very, very slowly because karma is like this big ship. So this is called dependent. Dependent means interdependence. It's the results of past causes. Dependent. And then how we relate to that, our father, mother, brother, sister, health, and all those circumstances, our own body, and to a certain extent, our own mental inheritance, whether you have a lot of faith or not so much faith, whether you have a lot of wisdom, or intelligence, wisdom, or not, and so on. How we relate to that, project onto it, tell the story of me and it, me and you. How we do that is called imaginary projection. It's very different because it's not like the karmic lot that we are delivered with, like it or not, in this life. It's our attitude, how we view it, how we can tell ourselves a different story of me and then relate to it in a helpful way, and in particular, in a way which makes no more suffering for the future and sows the seeds of relative happiness, but most of all, starts to take us along the path so that our mind becomes peaceful and free and well in every way. So that's called imaginary projection. It's for imaginary creation. That's what we've got here. So it says we don't recognize Buddha mind. It's not apparent to us. And no one, not even a great Lama, can just dangle it in front of you and say, woo, Buddha nature. They can't point you to your mind to say, to help us understand, unless we go through this path of training like Mahamudra, whereby through years of careful meditation and practice, we get to a point where then our own mind has done so much work, you can sit with your teacher and then share for the first time in this life, the most sacred moment, when you recognize the Buddha you've always been. And you think, but I've always known this. I said this in another talk. But in fact, you've realized it's the first time in this life that you come back to find it. So, so we've got those two. Now they're very entangled. I can talk about them. You know, your karmic lot, the dependent, and then the imaginary creation, how we are relating to that, defining ourselves through it, telling ourselves again and again, like, I'm Ken who's got cancer, and then we get full of self-pity or whatever it is. Or I'm Ken who's now got the cancer opportunity to really learn and really empathize with it. You know, you can turn the story for better, for worse. We define ourselves in terms of the lot. Normally, that's the way humans work. And we define the world. That's good, that's bad, that's a friend, that's an enemy. And we have lots and lots of fixed projections. So what triggers those projections? Your mum, your dad, your brother, the sister, your workplace, and so on. And the actual way we experience it, very hard to disentangle in real life. Very easy for Buddhists to say, this is this, that's that. But in reality, it's much more complicated. And this is why we talk about klesha as being conflicting mind. Lots and lots of conflicts and confusions. But all the time that those two aspects are going on, life manifesting to us reacting to it, that's all happening in our mind. And the real nature of this mind is Buddha, dharmakaya, that we just looked at. So the text says, therefore, because we don't recognize it, there's the idea that what is not really is imaginary creation, and then the concepts about the world around us and other people by this are what is conditioned or dependent. Conditioned, dependent means the same thing. And then ignoring what is actually true, that's the real truth, the third aspect. Then there is self-made suffering. We make our own sufferings by all of that karmic patterning, conditioning, so strong, so deeply ingrained, so hard to understand in the first place, and then even harder to work with in the second place. So Karmapa says, alas, the qualities of dharmakaya are there, and understanding them to be true, that's true understanding. But now, just now, its power to help us is reduced. Rejecting true knowledge, the untrue is created because this mixture of karmic manifestation to the mind and projections onto it is illusory. I think these days we would say subjective, totally subjective. Can be changed. It's just the way we are reading the story, experiencing the story, telling the story just now can be changed. But it makes an untrue world in which we live with anger or jealousy, desire, pride, or whatever. And he says, then this untrue reality is pursued. And through its build-up comes the calamity of suffering. So in that section, Karmapa is telling us how it's there, but it's crushed. And then in Maitreya's teachings, the more expanded version, we get a few examples, beautiful examples of this. One of them is about a buried treasure. It's a beautiful example. Well, it's not beautiful in itself, it's sad, but it's an excellent example. There's a poor person who lives in a rough hut, in developing countries. You can see just a simple structure. Person's living in there, sleeps on the floor, got one pot, make a little fire. Now, really poor person, and probably going out, like in India, people sleep in their rickshaws and they pedal, even though they're skin and bones, to take tourists around and so on. But here we're thinking of a poor person living in a very, very poor dwelling. And what the person doesn't know is that centuries and centuries before, a treasure got lost in the ground, is buried under the ground. So it says the treasure can't call up from underground to tell the man, hello, I'm here, I'm a treasure. And the man who looks down and who sees the dirt, he can't see, oh, there's a treasure under there. He just sees what? Dirt. That's it. So this is why we have Buddhas and Bodhisattvas and Dharma teachers to help us understand, tell us we have Buddha nature. So listen, so in the story, in this Maitreya's story, then there is a deva, a divine being who comes along, who can see underground, who can see the treasure, and he tells the man. You imagine, poor, tired, a skinny man coming back from a day's work, and then this kind of spirit appears and says, underneath the ground where you sleep, there's a fortune buried. You might think, come on, it's just dirt. And they said, no, dig, it would change everything. So then the man starts digging. What does he find? Dirt. And after that, more dirt and rock, and then hard rock. And it's going to be a long time before that ding, when his pickaxe hits the treasure chest, and then, what? There'll be a lot of work to do, a lot of tiredness. But then once the treasure's found, it changes everything. So that's one of Maitreya's examples. So then, okay, how they're present now but not apparent. The next section is then, what do we do? How can we realize it? So it says, knowing that these qualities are here now, then their power can be made real, achieved. And then there's a quote, one of the most famous Buddha nature quotes. It's from a tantra called the Sri Mahabala Tantra. Sri Mahabala Tantra. Nothing whatsoever to remove from this. Not the slightest thing thereon to add. Properly beholding the true nature, when it's truly seen, total liberation. We do not and cannot make the Buddha qualities by all of our practice. Our practice is to take away what's covering it up. It's like digging away the dirt. We don't make the treasure, it's there. We don't make whatever's in that beautiful casket under the poor man's house. We don't make the jewels and whatever's there, the gold. We need to dig the dirt, get rid of the dirt to purify. Not the slightest thing to add to it. And then in itself, the treasure's the treasure. It's nothing to do with the dirt above it. Okay, on a relative level, we need to take away dirt. And really and truly, it means in ourselves to come to know this samsaric mind we have. It's not nice. It's not nice. The more we learn to see inside through meditation, there's so many Agni-Bhaglis, there's so much darkness of different sorts that we carry, but we need to be brave and inspired and helped by the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, all the refuges, and then we can take away the dirt. But in the end, all of that work with our emotions, our pride, our jealousy, and so on, is not what Buddha's about. We've been taking away obscurations. But then when we come to the treasure, it was nothing to do with all of that. It was just been there all the time. We got ourselves into the confusion and samsara and have done and repeated it again and again and again. But when it's gone, it's gone. And it's nothing to do with all the work we did. It will be what it's always been. So we need to learn. It says to truly behold what is true. The word true comes up 4 times in the original Sanskrit. To truly behold what is true. When it's truly seen, that's true liberation. Authentic. So this is what Mahamudra practice is all about. How can we work with this mind we are, this mind that carries its history and our current projections and story? How can we work with it so that we see what's really always been the truth of it? So then there are 2 points, very important points in terms of theory, in terms of Buddha nature teachings. It's called the 2 natures. The nature of samsara, samsaric mind, and nirvana, liberation from samsara, the nature of relative mind, let's say, and the nature of Buddha mind are totally different. We're not looking at a super duper relative mind. We're not working with the relative to make it best relative. We're talking about getting rid of it forever. And then there is the timeless goodness of Buddha. So it says, there's a word in Tibetan, it's lo wurwa. Lo wurwa. And you'll find it translated differently. In itself, the term, the term means passing, fleeting. So, flick, flick. Here it was, there it's gone, like this. Lo wurwa. But in the explanation of the Buddha's teaching, you'll find terms like adventitious. You might have seen that, adventitious stains. There is a philosophical term, accidental. Doesn't mean they came by accident, but accidental means It's something on the surface that doesn't affect the real nature. It's like water on your car windscreen. The water's there, the glass which is clear and could enable you to see straight ahead has temporary water on it. So we take away the water and you can see clearly. So the rain comes, blah, blah, blah. It's lawurwa. It just comes, passing, impermanent, temporary causes and conditions. So those lawurwa are adventitious, accidental, passing things, which now, okay, we've had a car windscreen, we've had the term. What are we talking about? Your life. and until we get Buddha nature experience, realization, everything. So it's okay to look at a text and say, oh, there's the adventitious stains that cover the Buddha nature. Yeah, nice words, and then you can get the laundry lists of the stains and so on. But we're talking about what is dependent, and then the imaginary creations, projections we make onto that. That's our whole world, our mental world. Buddha nature is nothing to do with those things. So the nature of samsara, of karma, cause and effect, and our relative experience changes every second. And even though it might seem to repeat, it doesn't really. It's a new version of a similar thing. Our life story is like that. So it just comes, goes through interdependence. Buddha nature is free of those passing adventitious details of our life. And of course, there's nice things and not so nice things, but all of that has nothing to do. It's not, we can't say Buddha nature's the pretty flowers and samsara's the weeds. Life has beautiful moments, relatively speaking, ugly moments, relatively speaking. The Buddha nature's nothing to do with that. And that story of up and down, well-being, suffering, so much suffering, so much unnecessary suffering for the price of the bit of happiness we get. So Buddha nature is devoid of that, nothing to do with it. And most important, not affected by it. Not affected by it. So those passing things, what cover up Buddha nature, says their nature is divisibility. So when we take it apart, there's your enemy, there's your anger, so much. Each word they say that makes you more and more angry, and each thought and association and all past it, when we look at life, it breaks down into so many components generated by karma. So the nature is divisibility, interdependence of things. But it's not devoid. Now, Buddha nature is not devoid of those ultimate qualities. 32 we just had. Their characteristic is indivisibility. So although as human beings receiving teachings to help us understand so much, then the Buddha in his great kindness and our great teachers have told us 10 this, 18 that. Actually, Buddha mind is. The rest is our analysis. Those qualities are indivisible. You'll never find any of them all by itself. They just are. So it's like when we look into that candle flame, like we did earlier on, we can explore so much. We can bring all the machines in the world. You could write a doctoral thesis about that candle flame, but it just is candle flame. So now the next section is about the form kayas. And all the Karmapa says the nature of the two form kaya is the 32 marks and special signs. So sometimes we get 32 very distinctive, unique signs of the Buddha. Sometimes we get 80 more secondary things. So people who experience Buddha come back and report. And then although there are many millions of ways Buddha mind can manifest, when people actually, what can you say, meet Buddha as seemingly a being in their life, when the people back in India 2,600 years ago met Buddha, there were things about Buddha's physical presence that were very special. So there's a list of 32, then another 80, and then these are to do with Sambhogakaya experience, what very, very pure minds, peaceful minds, liberated minds who are never separated from Buddha nature, bodhisattva minds in the 10 levels of bodhisattvas, how they experience in their meditation, let's say, to make it easier to understand, Buddhas and Buddha fields and what they see, and that all the Buddhas, peaceful, wrathfulness, they have nevertheless certain signs in common. And then Nimanakaya is what we human beings can experience, like the people back in India, the tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, that actually saw the Buddha. Amazing. Amazing. I hope all of us here, we missed that one, Sakyamuni, but the next one coming along is Maitreya. So I hope we're all there to actually have this experience. So then Buddha is not like seeing somebody. It's a mind-changing experience. And in past talks, I've mentioned this with the 16th Karmapa, where people would go in to see him, and they'd all see him, even in the same group of people, very differently. Is a presence, and people's minds receive that presence according to their own configuration of mind. So then there are 32 marks. So let's just look at one of them. It says when people look up and they see Buddha, and they look at the top of the Buddha's head, they can't see it. It seems to go up and up and up and up, beyond what you can see. They can't make it out, but when they see it, the seeing and the wonder of what they see is accompanied by a feeling, most sacred, blessed feeling, to know that the Buddha in all of his past lives, as a bodhisattva and before that, respected his teachers, put them in a sacred place, received their teachings, and then through that became better and better. People feel that. It doesn't need words. They just feel, like Shakyamuni's Buddha, all of his 3 cosmic eons of journey on the Buddhist path. And in all of those, he had teachers. And even in his enlightenment life, he went to the best teachers. In India, he respected them, took their instructions, he received their practice. Problem was, he mastered the practice and got better than his teachers, and there was no one else to go to. So then he had to go and finish his own journey. So when people see the, so what can artists do? You cannot make a statue with an infinite head. So in some Buddhist countries, Buddha's got a pointy head to show that it kind of goes up and up and up and up. In some, they simplify it to a head mound. And then some lamas, that 16th Karmapa, had 2 of the 32 marks that people witnessed. And one of them was, he had the mound, his head on the top was much more mounded than other people's heads, but anyway. So that's why I sent you the Maitreya teachings about the 32 marks. There's an explanation in there, and I invite you to read the support document that I sent out. Now, the next point is called justification. It's justifying, it's kind of not proving, but it's affirming, giving us more help that these Buddha qualities, because now we've had 32 qualities of dharmakaya, 32 qualities of the form kaya, 64 qualities altogether. It says the achievement of those qualities comes from one's own body. This is the Vajrayana view. Now we have the third Karmapa's view. So then he talks about this body you have that's inseparable from our mind at the moment. He says, first of all, where does it come from? And he says, it's not made by a self, like a cosmic self, a superego. It's not made by destiny. It's not made by Vishnu or Brahma. The commentary says Cha. So different religions have their creation stories. God made us. Brahma, the Vishnu. For the Burn religion in Tibet, it was Cha, the creator. Or there isn't a sort of, as in some Hindu faiths, the true soul, the divine soul that makes. It is not made of atoms, of matter, nor hidden behind something. So these are all references to major philosophies at the time of Buddha, and that said this is where this body comes from, and what it is not is matter or whatever. So it says we use the term achievement. So in the first line of this text it says the achievement of the qualities. It says the time when the term achievement is used, attainment, is when the 5 doors and their impure form of percept and perceiver have been purified. So 5 doors are seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, and physical sensation. Hot, cold, hunger, thirst, nerve endings all over the body, in the body. When those 5 doors have been worked on and purified, cleansed, purified, then the Buddha mind becomes apparent. So this is why in Vajrayana we have yoga work, we have meditation posture, and it's very, 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 very helpful, incredibly helpful. So when, through the 5 doors, the impurity, which is percept and perceiver, I'm seeing you, I'm seeing other. There's an I, and there is an other which is seen. There is an I and an other which is heard, an other tasted, an other felt, and so on. When that's purified, then there is achievement in terms of those qualities that have been talked about here become real for us. So then the next point's about purity and impurity. And it talks about what this body is. Now this is in Vajrayana terms. It's stuff we don't normally talk about in public. This is teachings for those who receive empowerment and who do the practices. And so we say the body, the true body, or the inner body, sometimes it's called the subtle body, is made of channels and chakras and it's hard to find an English word, energy drops, let's say energy drops. The last, sometimes called bindu, Sanskrit term, or tilaka, Sanskrit term, bindu tilaka. So there are, so our body has subtle channels. We have a central channel, then 2 main side channels, and then 10 and 14 branches from the side channels each. And then altogether, they could become smaller and smaller, 72,000 energy channels in our body. And the places where they cross and meet and important things happen are called chakras. So we have a crown chakra, throat chakra, heart chakra, navel chakra, and then sacral chakra, then chakras in the main joints, the shoulder, the elbow, the wrist, and in the legs. And these are like railway interchanges. And then in terms of our physical body, we're looking at our cardiovascular system, our lymphatic system, endocrine system, nervous system, and what flows around, and places of interchange. But then these energy drops, one example would be hormones. The hormones that travel around the cardiovascular system and make things happen in the body, they are part of these concentrated power energy flows. That's one way of talking about it physiologically. Actually, what we're talking about is how that manifests to the mind of the meditator. So, therefore, the subtle channels, the vital energies, winds, and the life drops, when they are purified through Dharma work, they manifest the form kaya. So like to see a Buddha in a pure land, to see Medicine Buddha in Medicine Buddha's pure land, you don't need an Elon Musk rocket, and you don't need to go far, far away somewhere else. You need to purify your own inner energies, and the Pure Lands manifest through your 5 sense doors to you. You will see differently by working on yourself. You will hear differently. You will smell differently. When the smell awakens, for instance, when there's a truly saintly being, they have a very special smell. It's wonderful. Anyway. And so then the way the texts talk about this, because this comes from very beautiful enlightened minds, like the 3rd Karmapa, who sees everyone as Buddha. So he says, when we're in the impure phase, like now, for me, I don't know about you, but for me, then this is the impure form kaya. It's not been purified yet. But the goodness is already there. All the 32 and 80 Buddha qualities are there. So there's the impure form kaya, and then, when we've worked on it, pure form kaya. The Buddhas see the goodness in us that's there all the time. We don't see it, we don't experience it, but we can work on it. So next we get an example. We're almost finished for this morning. I hope you're not too saturated. And it's about a gem, Vaidurya. Now, problem is, it doesn't really exist on Earth. So here we get Buddha's teaching talking about a gem that exists in the Deva realms. In terms of here on earth, what have we got that's like it? Translators have been looking at this a lot. Some people say the jewel beryl. Some people say sapphire. Some people say lapis lazuli. But it's a blue gem that starts off in ore, in rock. So it says, for example, when the Vaidurya gem is inside its stone crust, it's locked up inside rock, its qualities do not manifest. Now, I wish I had a giant sapphire here to show you now. Beautiful giant sapphire and a couple of lights. I used to love to play with laser lights and gemstones. So we could see, oh, how beautiful the color is under different lights and the beauty of the jewel, and feel it. But all of those are there in sapphire. But while it's in the rock, who can see the color? Who can see the beauty? I have a friend, not somebody I know that well, but a friend who has a diamond mine, and he nearly had to close because he couldn't afford to pay his workers and keep the machinery going. Wasn't doing so well. And then just before he would have to close, they found a diamond, $17 million diamond. And so his business is working again. And last time I saw him was in Zimbabwe. He'd flown in his own, he liked to fly his own aeroplane. And I saw him at a restaurant there. That's life. So anyway, that gem that saved his bacon was in rock. So it says, its qualities don't manifest. But when it's scrubbed, so first you have to chip off the rock. There's a brief version here. But once you've got mainly the gem, then you need to use acid and very rough material to polish it, and then cleanse it with lighter acid, vinegar, woolen cloth, and then use the purest water and finest muslin. It's about making a gemstone. Then in the end, it is pure, and such a jewel fulfills all the expectations. It's like our mind. First we have to do rough work on it, and then finer work, and then finer work, and more fine work. Then the meaning is, similarly, in order to cleanse this Vaidurya gem of our mind from the threefold shell of defilements, dualistic knowledge, and hindrances to meditative balance, one needs to cleanse it by means of the paths of accumulation and junction, the 7 less pure profound levels, and the 3 very pure profound levels. So we might come back to this in our next talk. I'll say a few words now, but this is, in terms of us and our practice, a very, very important work. What is the rough stone that's hiding this gem of our mind? We've got 3 areas in our mind as we work with it in the living moment. There are the defilements, they're called kleshas, so main ones: desire, aversion, desire, hostility, pride, jealousy, ignorance. We have an ongoing habit of these, and deeply rooted through hundreds of lifetimes of being caught up in them, getting jealous about this or whatever it is. So that's one thing we work with. And everything that came, when it says defilements, it means everything that came out of them, all of our karmic baggage, karma baggage, we need to work with. But then deeper than that and much more subtle. So now we're not in the acid and the rough cloth, we're in oil and vinegar stage. is duality itself, the way our mind splits everything into two: subject, object, perceiver, perceived. Two-sided reality every single moment. Through meditation, we work on that. And then in the process, as you meditate, you'll find that obstacles come up. Each person has their own obstacles to their meditation practice, to their Dharma development. Depends on the past, depends on our past lives. So then, yeah, they're the three areas we have to work on. We do that through the 5 stages of the path. The path, and we've had a course on this. It's not today I can elaborate them, but the path of accumulation, where we start, the donkey work, the very hard work of learning to meditate and changing what's not good in us for good, and making the good in us stronger and stronger. Stage of accumulation. Second stage, called junction or fusion, integration, is where we are developing our understanding of shunyata, the dreamlike, mirage-like nature of things, and the depth of what shunyata avoidance means. Through those first two stages of the path, then we get to insight, where Buddha nature is real. What we've been working for all those lifetimes or years, whatever, actually comes on board. That's called insight. It's the first bodhisattva level. So then there is the first of 7 what are called relatively impure bodhisattva levels. Because in those first 7 levels, we still have the habit of the defilements there. It doesn't get us anymore, but it's still there and it limits the mind. The mind keeps going back to those things, even though then they can't overpower us anymore. So there are 7 levels of work on that. At the 8th level, we break through to non-duality as an actual living experience. So 8th, 9th, 10th levels are the pure bodhisattva levels. And then the 5th stage of the path is Buddhahood itself. So, of course, that's the whole story of our Dharma practice. We had a course on the 5 levels of the path, and in many times we've gone through the obscurations that obscure our Buddha nature. So let's stop there for today. And what I'll do for next time we meet, which is in 2 weeks' time, and next Saturday we have the monthly Tonglen practice group. So I hope you've got plenty to think about and reflect on and make your own homework with today's talk. And I've lost the thread of what I was going to say, but anyway, that will, for next time, I'll make a new version in English of our dedication prayers at the end. So I'll send that out to you. So let's dedicate now, sharing everything that was good and meaningful with all of our heart brothers, Dharma sisters, every single sentient being, feeling them like our dearest, dearest friend. Sonam diye tamche zikpani top ne nye pedranam pamchene je ganachi palap trukpaye sipe sole rowa drolwarasho janchub semcho rinpoche ma jepa nam jecho chik jepa nyampa mepadam komne komdo perwarasho gewa di nyotata chacha chempo drukjone drowa chikjam malupa the isala kaparisho. Well, over to you. I don't know if you've got anything you'd like to say or any question you'd like to ask.
Ken?
Yes, Rose.
It's not a question, actually. It's simply saying thank you very much for these teachings. And I won't be joining you for the last two live because I'm away.
Yep.
And I'm in India. But I will catch up on Zoom, on YouTube, obviously. But thank you ever so much. They've not been easy teachings. I've not found them easy. There's a lot of conceptual stuff, but it's also conceptual and at the same time non-conceptual. So that's why I found it hard. But thank you very, very much. And it's been well worth it.
Oh, thank you so much, Ros. Yeah, it's always like that.
Yeah.
We work on concepts most of the time, so we need to get them straight and get the information straight. So when we do the actual practice, like you're doing, then we don't make fundamental mistakes as things happen in our meditation. We know where we're going. It's I think I mentioned it already in this course. I think it was this course. When in Samiling we were setting up our study program and meditation program for retreats, then the previous Kalu Rinpoche, who was the meditation teacher for all of our Kagyu heart sons, and who actually the 16th Karmapa left in charge when he died, because they were all quite young still. He said, even if you're going to spend all of your life in meditation retreat, wherever, in a retreat center, in a cave, he said, these Buddha nature teachings, the conceptual teachings, are what you need to master so you don't get your meditation wrong. Lots of Buddhist study we can do without. Buddhists got very, very much into study over the centuries, and there's acres and acres of it. But he was saying some stuff you just can't afford not to know, because you'll get your practice wrong. And that happens. I've seen that happen. I've seen that happen with lamas too, Tibetan lamas. They've done retreat, but if you've studied, like I had such fortunate time to study with the best of the best teachers, and then sometimes I hear lamas, I'm sad to say it, but you think, oh no, don't say that. Buddha never taught that. That's what you think. It's terrible, terrible. So that's why Kalu Rinpoche said it. This is absolute need to know stuff.
And I had a question about passion.
Passion.
Compassion.
Compassion. Oh yeah, right.
Why in the second turning is compassion really accentuated when what you said this morning was that even though it's at the heart of Buddha nature, it's not necessarily, I don't know what the word is, taught or explored in particular traditions?
The three turnings work on top of each other. So the first and second turnings are taken for granted in this third turning, teachings on Buddha nature. All the teachings about a bodhisattva's compassion now. What we don't get here, and what we get in the Buddha nature teachings, especially when they're explained by our masters, are something, I think we could sum it up by the word momentum. Well, let's take you. When you become Buddha, right? When you're there, you're going to go to dharmakaya mind. That's the same for all of us. It never changes. All Buddhas, that's why they're Buddhas. They became that. But not just that, you'll have radiance and activity like Sakyamuni Buddha has had since his enlightenment and for another few thousand years, helping beings in this world, the world that you'll become a Buddha in, but also because you are ultimately connected to everything, beings in many, many worlds. Now, but you won't help everybody. And if we read the Golden Eon Sutra about the 1002 Buddhas that come for our particular karmic group, they have different time spans of activity, different numbers of beings helped. So all of this is through the momentum of the Bodhisattva path. As we go through those 5 stages, and we are becoming more and more bodhisattvas, we meet people, we help them, we make a dharma connection, and more people, our own bodhicitta grows, and then we go up and become a first level bodhisattva, and so on. The whole thing becomes enormous. So when we become Buddha, all of those that we have a connection with, or enough connection with, will be either drawn to us at the time of becoming a Buddha, like Shakyamuni in India, or in the thousands or tens of thousands of years afterwards, when our invisible radiance is present in the world, they will be helped by us. So it's a momentum that's built up on the Bodhisattva path that gives you the 2 kayas of activity to help other beings. Otherwise, if those 2 kayas just came from dharmakaya, every Buddha would help everybody. But every Buddha would help the same number of beings. It doesn't work like that. It's so there's a lot to be said for taking your time to become a Buddha, because then you'll make lots and lots and lots of connections and help lots of people. It's not quite like that, but in terms of words and ideas of numbers, that's how it's described. So the compassion, the sort of compassion that's for us is dualistic. I feel for you. I sense the purity. I know about it, and I see what's going on in your life. I want to help. That dualistic compassion and making connections and really helping people on this dualistic level will be hundreds of lifetimes maybe. And then in the end, non-dualistic, a continuation of the same story. All of that huge compassion is present. So when we look at the 32 marks of the form kayas, just like with the feeling you get with the bump on the head, we feel how this is because in past lives they helped so many beings in this particular way through being forbearing, for instance. You just feel it. So the manifestation of the form kayas is the ongoing momentum. So if you think of a long jump, and you go like boom, 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 and then all of that's the Bodhisattva path. And then at the end, whee! So how far you go and boom, how well you land in the sand, you can't change that when you're up in the air. It's all because of the momentum of all your Bodhisattva path. So Buddha's activity, how many people it helps, how it helps them, that particular activity, medicine Buddha for people who are unwell and so on, is it's like that.
I have to listen to that again, Ken, because I haven't quite grasped it, but thank you for the explanation. But what I haven't understood is why compassion is emphasized in the second turning. Like, what's the purpose of emphasizing compassion? Is it about that kind of long jump?
No, the first turning is about getting yourself out of suffering.
Okay.
The second turning is for those who are capable. It's not for everybody, the second turning.
Yeah.
But for those who have an awakened heart, it's called. For those who have an awakened heart, then of course we need to get ourselves out of suffering. It's how we're going to help the others. But the whole emphasis now comes, it's not just about getting you out. Look out there, how much suffering. What can we do to help them? So then that's implicit in the third turning, which is Now you're not developing this parameter and that parameter, like you're building up enlightenment brick by brick. That's why it says there's nothing to add to this. It's saying it's always been there. All of that path has been to take away obstacles. So we develop compassion because our natural inner compassion, the Buddha mind, has been stifled by selfishness.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Welcome.
Ken, I'm just wondering if you mentioned that compassion wasn't specifically emphasized in this list of qualities, whether at that sort of level, it's more a case that the compassion is simply something that manifests through the action of those qualities, but that, like, if you go around untangling knotted up pieces of rope, they'll naturally flow more freely through pulleys and stuff like that.
Yeah, there's something of this. And
so you don't need to have the intention, even the specific intention of I'm really trying to help you or you or you. It's just simply I do these things, and that's the result, is to help people.
Yeah, it's a natural outflow of wisdom. You know, if somebody's talking about rope, and they're having trouble with a knot, right? You can see what wisdom means. You see what there is to be done. So if somebody's struggling and you can see what's been done, you can help them. You can either do it or tell them, no, don't do this, don't do that. It's the natural outflow of wisdom. So when we get to the, where is it? Yeah. No, this one, Buddha Nature Teachings. Then there, it's very clear. It says what Buddha really is intrinsically, dharmakaya, is wisdom, compassion, power. But mainly it's wisdom and compassion. That's why Vajradhara is sort of like this, the two, because it says the power is the natural outflow of wisdom and compassion, which are inseparable. And here it's Karmapa talking to meditators. Normally this text is an annex text to people doing yoga work and meditators. So he's talking to meditators who have experience. You know, they've done a lot of meditation, they experience. So the main experience is that what we do in Guru Yoga practice is to experience their Guru's mind. And that's just so, it's naturally so compassionate. It brings tears to your eyes. You know, they experience their Guru as Vajradhara, and they feel that why is there so much compassion? It's because of the wisdom. What is the wisdom? It knows what is, and it knows how people are hurting themselves and each other so much by not recognizing what is. It's like if you see children self-wounding, you know, this is what kids do these days, some of them. Wise mind knows that. Why that's going on and how harmful it is. It breaks your heart. It's terrible. So wisdom is the natural source of compassion because it knows what is, which is so perfect, and it knows the mess we're in, each of us.
Thank you.
Welcome. Well, my friends, and hello, I see a few faces now that I didn't see to say hello to at the beginning, so it's nice to see you. And I say hello and goodbye, and I wish you all a good fortnight until we meet again. So we did our dedication. We just wish you very, very, very well.
Thank you, Ken.
Thank you.
Ken. Take care.
Thank you, Ken. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Ken. Thank you, everybody.
Ken. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.